5:30 Tuesday, July 18th, 2023. We'd like to call this meeting to order. We have with us today Justin Harrison, our Executive Director, Brian Jones, our Legal Counsel. We have Counselor Handley, Counselor Shipley, Counselor Hoban, Counselor Ellsworth, Counselor McKay, Counselor Whipple. Do we have Bill on Zoom? Okay. All right. Today we'll have an opening prayer by Stan Jensen.
Dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful to be gathered together today to work to the benefit of the community. We pray that we will be inspired and guided in our efforts to lift and raise one another and to do that which is good for the community and for each of us. We give thanks for the many blessings we enjoy in this land of freedom and opportunity. And we do so in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Stan. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance today by Counselor Travis Hoban.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As indicated on the screen, a required public hearing will be held for certain agenda items prior to council action. After each such item has been presented, time to comment will be provided for all those who wish to speak. For items that do not require a public hearing, public comment will be taken following presentation of the item, but will be limited to 10 minutes. At this time, up to 15 minutes have been set aside for an open public comment period, which is intended to allow comments on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Persons who speak during this time to an item that is on the agenda will not normally be afforded a second opportunity to speak during the comment period specific to that item. During any public comment period, each speaker will generally be limited to 2 minutes. Due to noticing requirements, no formal action will be taken in this meeting on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Those with comments are invited to approach the podium. Those participating on Zoom will need to use the raise hand feature to indicate they wish to comment. The chair may choose to alternate between in-person and online commenters. Please begin your comments by stating your name and your city of residence. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. At this time, is there anyone that has a general comment they would like to make? All right. We are going to move on to our first motion. This is an implied motion, a resolution approving an individual to the Civil Service Commission. And this will be presented by Justin Harrison, our Council Executive Director.
Good afternoon, Council. Today before you, we have a resolution appointing an individual to the Civil Service Commission. Mr. Bruce Haraguchi was previously appointed as an alternate to the board a few months back, and we had a recent resignation and need to fill that term. With that information, is there any questions that the council has?
Doesn't look like it.
All righty.
All right, any council discussion? Okay, we're going to vote on the implied motion. Counselor McKay, yes. Counselor Whipple?
Yes.
Counselor Ellsworth?
Yes.
Counselor Fillmore? Oh, I'm sorry, he's excused. Counselor Hanley?
Yes.
Counselor Shipley?
Yes.
Counselor Hoban?
Yes.
And that is unanimous, 6-0. All right, next we have an implied motion on an ordinance amending Provo City Code regarding apartment building signage requirements. This will be presented to us by Malia Daly.
Hi, Council. Okay, so this has come to 2 work meetings now, and this, for the public, just to kind of catch everyone up, this is so that there is public contact information available on multifamily housing, and so that way they can contact maintenance, if there's a maintenance emergency or anything else going on, there's an easy access to contact someone that's responsible for that property. So this text amendment takes into account that changes that were made at the last work meeting. We went ahead and went with including condominium projects explicitly in the section, and then also having the sign in English and Spanish. We clarified the language on where it would be located and whose contact information that would include. And then kind of just some in number 3, some specifications on what the sign actually will look like and consist of. So if there's any questions, we can answer those, but if not, we'll go with the motion.
Counselor Ellsworth.
So I missed the last meeting. I was out of town, but the prior meeting, I was questioning how this could be enacted when a building is condominiumized, right?
Yes.
And there's multiple owners in one building. And how was that resolved?
Yeah, so we had a discussion about that, and we actually investigated a little bit on our GIS about properties that have more than one owner. We looked into that, and those properties, even if they do, so if you have a building that has 12 units per se, and each one is owned by a different management company, those buildings still have to have their parking lots and then shared living spaces managed by a single point of contact. And so there is a point of contact for that. And so we felt that resolved kind of the issue, and they could figure out between them on who they wanted to take responsibility for that number. Because it's just the same as if there's, a sign for parking is managed by this person. Usually there's a sign on who's managing the parking, and then shared living spaces, that's within leases about who's in charge of those. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I had another question and I forgot it. Yeah, I guess that's it.
Any other questions for Malia? All right. Thanks, Malia. We'll open up this issue for public comment if there's any public comments. All right, council discussion.
I remembered my question.
Go ahead.
Is there a penalty if this is not applied within 6 months?
Malia.
We also discussed that last work meeting. We brought in Scott to talk about code enforcement and how they would enforce on this generally. And then also if they do not comply within 6 months. And so as it's just part of just business license and signage requirements for buildings, they'll just enforce as every other requirement in this section. So they'll just, when they go to do a business license, or this will be one of those requirements they have to meet in order to renew that or to get it in the first place.
I see.
And then if there's a complaint, obviously through complaint process, if a tenant or someone else recognizes that there isn't one, then they can report that, and then normal code enforcement process can go through that.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, no discussion. All right, well, we'll vote on the implied motion then. Counselor Whipple.
Yes.
Counselor Ellsworth.
Yes.
Counselor Fillmore is excused. Counselor Hanley.
Yes. Counselor
Shipley.
Yes.
Counselor Hoban.
Yes.
And Counselor McKay, yes. That's unanimous, 6-0. Next, we have implied motion, an ordinance amending Provo City Code to add official city maps. And this will be presented by Nick Malstein, our Assistant City Attorney.
All right, good evening, council. I do feel like this is a fairly self-explanatory ordinance here. I mean, official city maps, we will amend the code at 1.08, create a new chapter saying official city maps, and we'll include 5 maps. If we go down to the ordinance itself, the general plan, the zoning map, neighborhood district, annexation map, and the fireworks discharge restricted area map. Now, this would be about establishing these as the official maps, meaning just they're in the code defined as that. These maps do already, exist. That's what the links are. The links work right now, but it will give people another route to find these things and maybe give them a little more weight, just because it'll be said that now this is, a few official maps we have here, and just provide more general information. Within the text, there is also a bit of a disclaimer saying that, again, we can't absolutely guarantee, there are no inaccuracies, there's conflicts, then the legislation controls rather than the map, and to seek verification of map details from city staff, which I don't think there's any way around that. And if anyone's going to be doing, anything drawing upon significant legal issues, they probably want help rather than to just leap off on their own. But really, I don't feel there's that much more to say. Those are just the maps that we felt would be potentially, including every conceivable map would probably, be a little long. So we felt these were 5 important ones that could be put into the code, give people more opportunities to find things. And any questions that anyone might have, but that's really all I had as far as.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Any questions for Nick? I think you're good. Thank you. We'd like to open this item up for public comment. Any comments on the maps? All right, council discussion. All right, we're going to take a vote. Councillor Ellsworth.
Yes.
Councillor Fillmore's excused. Councillor Hanley.
Yes.
Councillor Shipley.
Yes.
Councillor Hoban.
Yes.
Councillor McKay, yes. Councillor Whipple.
Yes.
That is unanimous, 6-0. Next, we have an implied motion on an ordinance amending Provo City Code Chapter 9.06, public disturbances, to correct language related to gender neutrality. This will be presented by Abby McAbee.
Hello. So a while back, the city code was updated to have gender neutral language instead of gender specific language. And this specific section was missed. So this is just amending that and updating it with more gender neutral language. So you can see it's instead of policemen, it's police personnel. So that's it.
Thanks, Abby. Any council discussion? All right, we're going to call for a vote. Councillor Fillmore's excused. Councillor Hanley.
Yes.
Councillor Shipley.
Yes.
Councillor Hoban.
Yes.
Councillor McKay, yes. Councillor Whipple.
Yes.
And Councillor Ellsworth.
Yes.
That is unanimous, 6-0. Next, an implied motion on a resolution approving the petition to annex approximately 3.46 acres of property located approximately 5,500 North Canyon Road, North Timpview Neighborhood. And this will be presented by Brandon Larson.
Thank you, Council. You've seen this around for a little while, and so I won't get into this won't give you too much of an introduction, but again, 9 acre annexation. You can see it right there, 9.1 acres. State code says if you've got 2 pieces, they technically need to be 2 different annexations. So we've split the petition. So this is effectively 2 separate annexations, 3.46 on the west on your left. On your left-hand side, and 5.64 acres on your right-hand side. So the area right there, you can see on the east, there's a Provo City Water facility there. And then right adjacent to it is agricultural land that's used by the Smiths. The Smiths residence is right there on the west, along with another Provo City facility and some roadway. The owners in here, the owners of the properties are Provo City, Scott and Jenny Smith, and some of their entities. And then Utah County owns a small little piece right there. They have given us a deed for that piece of land. And once the if you decide to approve this annexation and it is subsequently recorded, the plat is recorded, that land will be transferred to Provo City. This land right here, we believe, is UDOT's. It doesn't come up on a parcel map, but it is land that lies in the roadway. So we've been through quite a process. You know that it's been reviewed by staff, been to the Planning Commission. You've seen it before at a regular session and a study session. So we bring it back to you now after having gone through the noticing period and after having the attorney's office review it and the city recorder certify back up a little, after having the petition submitted and then reviewed by the city attorney's office and the city recorder having the petition certified by the city recorder, having all the noticing set forth as it should be in the state code. We bring it back now to you for hopefully a final decision. Hopefully for a final decision here. A couple of things that we haven't talked about yet is zoning on this property. There are two separate resolutions for this. I guess you've got items 5 and 6 here. So we've got a resolution for both the east and the west properties. So in there, it talks about zoning. And so after looking at the annexation policies, the proposal by staff and set forth in the resolution would be for the easterly property, for the Provo City tank parcel, and then the little parcel that's owned by Provo Canyon Estates. I think I failed to mention that Provo Canyon Estates LLC owns a little parcel up on the north above the tank parcel. Those two pieces would be zoned OSPR, open space, parks, recreation, and open space, parks, and recreation. So and that's according to the annexation policy declaration that the city has. It says if land comes in with an agricultural designation, that it should come in the OSPR zone. And the other land that's owned by the Smiths and that's further to the west, which is mainly road parcel, kind of a road parcel, we propose to bring that in as a 1-1, so 1 acre agriculture. And so that's what we've got with the resolution. We also have an annexation agreement that we'd like the Smiths to sign, and most of the document is boilerplate language, boilerplate agreement language, but there are two main things in there. One, it establishes the zoning, as I've already explained, and then number two, it's an acknowledgement by the Smiths that they're not going to get any additional utility or roads that will be provided to them through this annexation process now or at any time, unless they do it themselves. So that's essentially what's in the agreement. We had hoped to speak with the Smiths today, but haven't. Oh, there they are. So been trying to get a hold of Smiths and have them review that agreement. And perhaps they have. We sent it out to them earlier today, and they can speak to that. If they're satisfied with those 2 points, I don't think anything else in the agreement should be really of concern to them. Other than that, I think one last item. So there is an impending boundary, notice of impending boundary action that has been prepared as part of the documentation that was forwarded to you for this item. What that is it's basically a notice that we send to the Lieutenant Governor's office saying that all of the annexation requirements have been met. And so that staff is telling you that all the requirements have been met. And so if the council chooses to adopt a resolution approving these annexations, then part of that would be having the chair sign that notice of impending boundary action. After, if you choose to approve this annexation, it will go on to the lieutenant governors for certification and then to the county recorder for recording. Staff notes the planning commission recommended approval of these two actions, and staff again reiterates their support for these actions as well. And I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yep.
Any questions for Brandon? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
We're going to open this item up for a public hearing. If anyone has comments on this annexation. All right, council discussion. Councilor Hanley.
Well, the Smiths are here. I don't know if they, if you want to invite them, if they wanted to make a comment about Mr. Larson's specific question regarding the annexation agreement.
If they want to comment, sure.
Okay.
I guess the comment is that we are in agreement with the agreement. We're willing to sign. We've seen it. We've read it. Is anything else?
Any other comment, George?
No, I did.
Okay. Oh, hello, Mr. Smith.
Thanks for your attention on this annexation. We're excited to get into the city. Sorry, Brandon, if been hard to get a hold of. Broke the thumb in 3 places and dislocated it at the wrist. And we've picked a ton of apricots in the last 2 days and about 1/3 of a ton of cherries, trying to keep pace with the fruit crop. We're not ignoring anybody, but we're you don't get workers' comp doing my job. So, but thanks again for all of your consideration and the effort, especially Brandon, that put into this. And we are looking forward to being part of your beautiful city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Well, you've been very patient through this lengthy process. And thank you, Brandon. All right, take a vote then. All right, we're going to call for a vote. Councilor Hanley.
Yes.
Councilor Shipley.
Yes.
Councilor Hoban.
Yes.
Councilor McKay, yes. Councilor Whipple.
Yes.
Councilor Ellsworth.
Yes.
And Councilor Filmer's excused. That's unanimous, 6-0. All right, we have an implied motion on a resolution approving, I think this is you still, Brandon.
Yeah.
Approving the petition to annex approximately 5.64 acres of property located at approximately 5500 North Canyon Road, North Timpview Drive. Is that just a repeat?
This is the same, well, more or less the same item. There was originally one petition for annexation submitted, but when we started reviewing it, we realized that the parcels are not connected and state law doesn't allow them to be annexed in one single annexation. So we divided it into two. So this is just, it's the exact same material that you just saw.
Okay.
It's just the other portion on the map.
All right. Any public comment on the second part of it, which is really the same thing we just heard? All right. Any council discussion? All right. We're going to take a vote. Councilor Shipley.
Yes.
Councilor Hoban.
Yes.
Councilor McKay, yes. Councilor Whipple.
Yes.
Councilor Ellsworth.
Yes.
And Councilor Fillmore is excused. Councilor Hanley.
Yes.
So that's unanimous, 6-0. Now you can go, Brandon. All right, now we have an implied motion on an ordinance amending Provo City Code to expand prohibitions on depositing materials on sidewalks and streets and to regulate street parking of recreational vehicles, boats, and trailers. And this will be presented to us by Sandy Bushio, the parking program manager.
Okay, so first of all, on the first item, it's a text amendment to depositing materials on street prohibited. This is what we're trying to do, is add clarification to this ordinance. Yes. Oh,
We have our new magic screen
I
now.
was gonna say, wow. Okay, sorry. It's to add clarification, as it's written now, this is more landscaping, gravel, what have you. We're trying to add any other obstruction which shall render such highway or sidewalk unsafe or unsightly or shall interfere with travel thereon. Again, it's clarification. We're just trying to have a way to enforce this. Parking enforcement at this point cannot enforce because these debris or these things on the sidewalks do not have license plates or VIN numbers. So this just gives us another avenue, again, to remove these items out of the public right of way. Okay, should I go to the second one?
Yep, keep going.
And the next one is proposed language. This is for using of streets for recreation vehicles, boats and trailers. This new ordinance would allow boats, trailers, again, to park on the city street for up to 72 hours for loading and unloading purposes. If one of these moved and came back to the same spot, the 72 hours would continue. It would not start over as vehicles do. We do allow vehicles to leave because a lot of them are used for travel. And then if they come back, their 72 hours will start again. What we have put in here is a 7-day permit. So if someone needed to park a RV or a boat or a trailer out on the public street for 7 days, they could petition or could request a permit from parking services, and we would allow them to do that.
Okay. Any questions for Sandy? Okay, thanks, Sandy.
Okay, thank you.
Any public comment on this ordinance? All right, we will move it to council discussion. All right, we are going to vote on the implied motion. Councillor Hoban.
I just feel like we have to tell the public that we did take a look at this and a lot of other things in our previous meetings. We call them work sessions. So we're not apathetic about this stuff. Yes.
That is true. We've studied this. All right.
Yes.
Councillor McKay, yes. Councillor Whipple?
Yes.
Councillor Ellsworth?
Yes.
Councillor Filmer is excused. Councillor Hanley?
Yes.
Councillor Shipley?
Yes.
That's 6-0 unanimous. All right. Next, we have an ordinance amending the zone classification of approximately 1.36 acres located between 5065 North Canyon Road and 5075 North Canyon Road from one family residential R120 to one family residential R110. This is the North Timpview Neighborhood presented by Dustin Wright, a planner.
Thank you. So here's the property the applicant's requesting to have rezoned. It's 3 parcels that they own. They're looking to rezone it from the R120 to the R110 single family residential. Their goal would be to be able to create more yard on the home that they live in since there's slope on the yard behind them, and to be able to reconfigure the lots to better comply with the zoning ordinance. I do have some numbers on that came up earlier in our meeting this afternoon. The lot on the north is 0.36 acres. The middle one is 0.54 acres. And the bottom one is 0.46 acres. So there's 80 feet of width on the top one, 95 feet of width on the middle lot, and 75 feet of width on the bottom lot. So the R110 zone would require 90 feet of width. So while these are non-conforming, rezoning it will help bring them more into conformance. They won't be able to get all 3 lots to be the minimum 90 feet, but they will be able to bring some closer to that compliance. And so staff has reviewed the request, supportive of it. The Planning Commission has forwarded a positive recommendation onto the City Council as well for approving this rezone.
Great. Thank you, Dustin. Anyone have questions for Dustin? Thank you. Next, we'll open up this item for public comment, please. All right, seeing no public comment, we'll go to council discussion. Again, we have discussed this earlier. And anyone want to discuss anything? All right, we're going to go to a vote. Councillor McKay, yes. Councillor Whipple?
Yes.
Councillor Ellsworth?
Yes.
Councillor Fillmore? Excuse, thank you. Councillor Hanley?
Yes.
Councillor Shipley?
Yes.
Councillor Hoban?
Yes.
Again, that's unanimous, 6-0. All right, next, we have an implied motion on an ordinance amending the zone map of approximately 2 acres of property located at 2075 West Center Street from one family residential to mixed use and authorizing a related development agreement. This is the Provo Bay area, and it'll be presented by Aaron Ardmore, planning supervisor. No, Aaron will speak first, right?
It's not a contest. He can go first. You guys are moving fast tonight, and one of my engineers isn't here.
Okay.
Would
Would you like to, we can go on to the next one and then just give me a, okay. All right, next we're gonna skip that for the moment. We're gonna go to an implied motion on a resolution. Do we have our fire marshal here? That might be an issue. Lynn's not here either. We are just too speedy.
I was gonna say, I can present on the fire order if you
Okay,
want.
great.
Okay.
A resolution instituting a fire restriction order, and this will be presented by Brian Jones.
I don't want to steal Lynn's thunder. I know he loves presenting in public, but this is a fairly simple issue. Pretty much every year, we issue one of these. The state law authorizes the fire marshal to issue a fire restriction order based on hazards. As Lynn presented today in our work session, this is later than normal because we had such a wet winter. But despite that wet winter, or maybe, I guess, let's put it this way, as a result of that wet winter, we have a lot of growth up in the foothills. But now that we've finally come to our hot summer, it's all drying out. And so there are some significant hazards up in the urban interface. So what this restriction actually does, starting on Thursday, would be prohibit all fires that are not in fire rings or pits in improved campgrounds or in pits, fire pits in people's homes in that entire area up in the foothills, basically. So this just gives the fire department a tool to try to prevent wildfires and all the damage that causes.
Great. Thank you, Brian. We'd like to open up this item to public comment. All right, council discussion. All right.
I'll discuss.
Oh, go
Yeah.
Councillor Ellsworth.
No, I just really appreciate the fire marshal, the work that he does. When I was out running around on my morning run around the 4th of July, I would see the fire department like driving in the foothills, making sure that people were not unwisely using fireworks. And this will keep a lot of homes in Provo safe. So keep this in mind when you think about lighting fireworks around Pioneer Day.
All right, we will go to a vote. A vote on the implied motion, Councillor Whipple.
Yes.
Councillor Ellsworth.
Yes.
Councillor Fillmore is excused. Councillor Hanley.
Yes.
Councillor Shipley.
Yes.
Councillor Hoban.
Yes.
And Councillor McKay, yes. So that's unanimous, 6-0. Now Steve's still waiting for his man, right? All right. Do we want to go to RDA?
Yeah, we would have to close the meeting and then reopen.
Yeah. We are going to continue Barry Finch's request and ordinance text amendment to section 140820, meeting halls for rent as a conditional use for the A1 zone. If there's no objection, we will now adjourn the Provo Municipal Council meeting and convene as the Redevelopment Agency of Provo by unanimous consent.
Chair, I just note that we're only recessing. We're not adjourning yet because
That's an excellent point.
Just
We are going
so we
to
have-
recess. the Provo Municipal Council meeting and convene as the Redevelopment Agency of Provo by unanimous consent.
Great. This is a meeting of the Redevelopment Agency Governing Board of Provo. We will have one item, which is a resolution amending the bylaws of the Redevelopment Agency of Provo City Corporation. This will be presented by City Attorney Brian Jones.
Thank you, Chair. We are going fast. We're going so fast, I didn't even have a chance to open this on my computer to come up and walk through the changes if we needed to. This has been an ongoing item of discussion for several weeks now. The RDA bylaws were in need of some obligatory changes. The wrong address with the move of the city hall was in the old ones. There was a motion in a previous board meeting where the board members voted to remove the section on the executive committee. While we were taking care of those things, staff took the bylaws and we did a thorough review. We removed some archaic language. We brought some things into line with regular council practice, such as how items get on the agenda and some things like that. I wouldn't consider them to be extensive changes, but we did do a thorough vetting of the entire set of bylaws, and you have those in your material. I think they have been distributed a few times, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does the board have any questions on this item? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Thank you, Brian. So we will invite a motion to adopt the resolution as proposed. Does anyone want to make a motion?
Are we going to discuss?
Okay, yeah, so we'll start the discussion. Is there any discussion from the board?
I was wondering historically with the RDA, I know historically the leadership was the same in the council as it was in the RDA. And I think there would be some advantages to going back to that model. It'd start next year, it wouldn't be this year. But I am interested in looking into that and seeing if there's interest in adding that to the bylaws.
I'll just add, I think it could be in the bylaws, but it doesn't have to be in the bylaws. The council and the RDA board can just vote for the same two people if they want to. So there's a lot that we propose to be in the bylaws that were not written into the bylaws per the advice of our legal counsel. And I think there's also advantages to have them separate. So is there any other comments on this?
So the question is just whether or not we put it in the bylaws that it has to be, or we can keep it open and they could vote for it to be the same either way. Am I understanding that right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a strong preference then, I guess.
What if we defer that for 6 months?
We can do that.
Great. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone who would like to make a motion on this item? There's no implied motion.
I'll move that we adopt the resolution as proposed.
Great. Motion made by Board Member Whipple. A second?
I'll second.
Second made by Board Member Handley. We will have a roll call vote for this. So Board Member McKay?
Yes.
Board Member Fillmore is excused. Board Member Handley?
Yes.
Board Member Shipley?
Yes.
Board Member Whipple?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hoban?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. So that is 6 in favor and 1 excused. We will adjourn the Redevelopment Agency of Provo Governing Board. If there's no objection, we will adjourn by unanimous consent. And then we will reconvene as the Provo City Municipal Council.
All right, our last item of business. An implied motion on ordinance amending the zone map class of approximately 2 acres of property located at 2075 West Center Street from one family residential R18 to mixed use, and authorizing a related development agreement to Provo Bay area. And this will be presented by Aaron Ardmore.
Thank you, Council. So this item, if you recall, was continued from May, I believe, as the council wanted to give time to staff and the applicant to work through some concerns from the council, namely occupancy, parking, and amenities, I believe. So since that time, since May, the developer has proffered a new development agreement with some additional language, specifically in section 4. Hopefully you guys have had a chance to review that. Otherwise, I can just do a quick overview of, oh, sorry, you're good. Just kind of overview to refresh your mind. So here's the property, 2075 West Center. The applicant would like to do this mixed use project with 60 units and just over 10,000 square feet of commercial space. There's the parking ratio provided in his concept plan. And we've got the floor plans and elevations for you as well. If you recall, staff was against rezoning the 2 whole zone, the 2 acres. We preferred the 1 acre. That hasn't changed with this new development agreement. But I'm here for any questions if you have any.
Thanks, Brandon. Any questions for Brandon? Councillor Hanley.
Aaron.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Would you mind just giving a highlight though of the differences in the new agreement, and maybe explain a little bit more about why this did not persuade the staff to change their opinion?
Yeah. So maybe I'll answer the second question first. The biggest issue with staff's recommendation is we don't think it aligns with the general plan. So whatever is being proffered in the development agreement still, in our opinion, doesn't comply with the general plan. So that hasn't changed our recommendation. But to get into the specifics of the new development agreement, in the past, we just had one section or one paragraph in section 4 talking about the amenity space on the rooftop. So that has been kept, but edited to be a little bit more specific. And then you can see below that the developer has added an intent to plat as condos to have electric vehicle capability in the covered parking stalls. Some of the stalls would be covered by carports, and the developer has made his intent clear to provide wiring for EV charging. And then bicycle friendly, said that the site will include bike lockers and bicycle repair facility, and that he acknowledges that the certificate of occupancy for these units or the commercial space would not be given until the requirements of the section have been met. So those are the additions to the development agreement. The concept plan has stayed the same, but just those in writing.
Could I ask a follow-up question then? So Mr. Turley pointed out, I thought pretty persuasively that there were former statements by former council members. I was part of those discussions that these blobs on the map were not precise boundaries. There was some, understandable need to be flexible in given proposals. There had obviously, it sounded like there had been similar conversations with the Planning Commission and so on. But I wasn't clear on the reasons why why you were wanting to insist on that line as precisely as it seems like you are. And the reason I asked that is, having been aware of this West Side Plan for as long as I've been on the council, I remember asking this very question early on, like, are these, they look like blobs to me. They don't look like boundary lines. And so I'm sympathetic to that concern that there doesn't need to be, and that doesn't necessarily mean that this is the right way to go with this particular project, but I am curious to know what your response to that
Sure.
concern that he's raised is.
Certainly they are blobs. Certainly there's some movement, some plus or minus that could be had with any of these areas in the future land use plan. Staff felt that in this case, essentially doubling what was imagined on this corner was too far of a reach, especially when you consider that there's no really guarantees at this point of owner occupancy, of affordable housing, of anything that would really benefit this area of the city. So hopefully that sheds a little bit of light on our reasoning.
Are you concerned about losing out on an opportunity for commercial development here that we need if we say no to this project?
No, I think the market will dictate that. As you're all aware, we've been trying hard on northeast of this on the property there to get commercial. So I don't think this is either we do this project as it is now, or we say goodbye to commercial in the corner forever. I don't think that's the choice.
Okay, thank you.
So-
Councillor Shipley.
So this is an important point to me that Councillor Hanley just brought up the blob and moving around the dead. So you're saying that full corner would have had half as many total units than what this one plan and this one part accounts for? Because it seems like last time we discussed this, it was high density for the part of the blob that it was taking up, but I thought we talked about how the full section of this would allow for, it's just kind of basically it's moving some of the blob over basically, and it would cover as far as the density that was assumed when this was put in place.
I don't know if that's correct because of the building height restrictions and density restrictions of the mixed use zone. If they just did the 1 acre, I don't think they'd get 60 units.
Right, but the full blob is more than 1 acre, right? So he's
Right,
just taking a corner of the acre. He's just taking a corner of this section that's blobbed off. And I guess what we talked about last time is that if you took that full blob corner, what would be the density of that? What would be the amount of units that would be allowable in what was foreseen as the zone for that area?
Yeah, if you're incorporating the houses to the left, the west of it and stuff like that, I think it was around 45 units when we did
Would be the
math.
total.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councillor Ellsworth.
Thanks. When you were answering Councillor Handley's question, you said that there wasn't a commitment to affordable housing, right?
Correct.
Is that part of the desire for this mixed use node to have affordable housing?
I think it's a desire for housing in Provo overall, west side where there's a lot of growth. I think that is a desire.
Okay. And how do we reconcile the fact that like density typically leads to more affordability, like smaller lots and smaller units typically yield a more affordable product? And yet we're telling him we don't want as many units or we don't want as much density. I'm trying to figure that out. How do we have our cake and eat it too with affordability and density?
Well, I mean, right now the market is not affordable even for a small unit, right?
Sure.
And so without some kind of guaranteed deed restrictions, things like that.
Okay, that's what you're trying to get to.
That's really what I'm trying to get to.
Okay, so more pointed tools for affordability.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
I have a comment. Looking at the blob, I know talking to a couple of people who were on the west side planning thing, they did not see this as being that whole thing, high density. So I think that's relevant, or mixed use. There still is the reality that the sewer on the west side is overall 4 units per acre. And when we give increased density elsewhere, we are taking it away from other places. That's just mathematically the way it goes. And this is increasing the density, 7.5 times on that second acre. Is there a public works person? I would love to hear, because Steve went by saying, oh, it doesn't matter, that's not a real thing. I want to know if it's really a real thing that overall, when the west side is completely built out, if our sewer capacity is 4 units per acre, or if it's not.
Gary Calder, Water Resource Director. Great question. Dave Decker asked me to come here because he had a prior commitment. Back in 2017, we started designing this west side sewer. So that was quite a while ago. And in 2018, Horrocks Engineering, who was doing the master planning on that west side sewer, created a document. It's like 300 some odd pages that was submitted to the state, that was approved by the state for the design of that sewer line. To answer your question, when we initially started the design on this, the general plan was 4 units per acre. When we brought this to the council as a factor of safety, the council suggested that maximum rezoning should go to 6 units per acre. Okay. And so that is how that design of that sewer trunk line was built, was for a maximum of 6 units for any rezoning to happen. Okay. Me personally, from the water resource, I still ask for the 4 units per acre because I'm an engineer and I like factors of safety. We have a real problem on the west side with what we call I&I, that's infiltration. You got to remember that sewer line is 20 to 25 feet deep and there is high groundwater out there, and the chance and the probability of that groundwater getting into that sewer line increases over time. We don't have a problem now, it's a brand new line, but given time, we will have a problem. And if we change that zoning, if we increase zoning in this area or any other area, means that we will have to take zoning away from somebody else, which means we will have to say no. But that is how that was designed. I can give you a copy of this. It's a large document, but we went through all the aspects of this whole west side of anything that would happen. And as you're probably very well aware, we are nearing the lift station is coming online the end of this month. So we have done a lot of work. We've spent a lot of money, and that is the criteria. And there's no way to go back and make those changes unless we design something else to take care of that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much for clarifying that.
Okay.
Any questions? Councillor Hoban.
All right, so just for my simple mind, this plan that we have laid out here, if we built it out according to plan, approximately, we'd have that 4 units per acre, 6 units per acre, somewhere in there.
That is correct.
So then if in this the pink blob that we're talking about, or the red blob, if we were to give this development, Aaron's saying, it was anticipated that this specific corner would have about 45 units. If we give it 60, then there's 15 units somewhere else that we've got to shave off, right? Is that what you're essentially saying? Whether it be shave off 15 units somewhere within this pink area or somewhere throughout the rest of the west side. Is that the basic gist?
You are taking capacity away from some other property owner by doing that, in my opinion, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Whipple.
But we've got competing interests as well, because there's a lot of push for preserving open space on the west side. And so if we increase density in some areas, then we can't build out in others. And it seems like we're accomplishing both of those goals, to get more housing and to preserve open space. Is that a not good way of looking at it, or?
Well, when I was here 6-7 years, everybody was wanting single family on the west side. That was kind of the emphasis at the time, open space and how to restructure that. Really, in my opinion, wasn't the topic. It was, we want single family homes on the west side and people that are going to stay in Provo. That was the reason of getting those bigger lots and creating that area for people to not only live there, but to stay there. So as far as the open space and moving that around, I'll leave that to you to try to interpret how to work that.
Yeah, because we have heard a lot about people wanting like move up homes and things like that, but there are also demands for all housing types as well as open space. So we've got a lot of competing factors to try to balance.
I will say that you start changing the density, it's going to have a profound effect on that sewer trunk line. It's a large line, but still it will have a profound effect. And you'll have the same problem that
that we've had the last 4 or 5 years telling people to hold off while we build this trunk line, which we're doing, but you will create a problem for future councils by going against what we gave the state as far as the criteria and how we designed that.
But so when we were planning the sewer trunk line and creating this map with its little blob for the village center mixed use thing, it was anticipating higher density for this area.
And from my understanding was when we looked at this right here is for anything that was to be rezoned. Okay, we looked at the existing zone, and so we looked at things that agriculture that hadn't been, and that's what went to the 4 units per acre. So the existing zone, we left that for that type of capacity. Any of the future rezoning, we went to those 4 units per acre, if that helps answer your question.
I'm not sure. So when you were looking at it, you were not considering higher zone or higher density and things like this mixed use thing?
I will say this, we worked closely with community development to get those numbers. Okay. I'm not a zoning guy. And so, but we looked to them to help answer the questions as far as the potential capacity on our system on this west side. And they looked, community development looked at what the existing zones were to help fill in those spots. And that's why I think we have these little circles out here, as you call blobs.
Yeah. I guess where I'm stuck on it is because the blob seems to be kind of a flexible boundary membrane. I don't see what the problem is with extending it kind of down in this area if it means it's, sucking in somewhere else. Does that make sense?
I don't think any future
sense, but you're still taking away from
somebody else
potentially.
And is a future council going to know that it got sucked in? No, they're going to look at the blob and.
So.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. I just don't know how to answer the question. So.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right.
Councilor Ellsworth.
Yeah. I was on the West Side Planning Advisory Group in, I think the year was 2016-ish, 2017. Yeah, and my understanding was that these are blobs and that there is some malleability to it. And for good projects, I would hope that we can be somewhat flexible on those boundaries.
I know one thing that I'm worried about with this project is the parking. I do think we're going to have parking issues, and on Geneva with the commercial, which we need commercial there badly. And I think the commercial there is fantastic. But I do believe that the commercial will bring parking, and you can't guarantee that commercial's business is all gone by 5 when people come home from work. Oh yeah, we shouldn't be discussing it. I'm sorry, guys. All right, open for public comment. Steve Turley, would you like to come present?
We were just trying to buy you some more time.
Well, you did a fabulous job, and I appreciate it. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I appreciate your efforts. Having been in your shoes, I know what an amazing job you've done to be 45 minutes into the meeting and have it almost done. Let me just walk you through the slides just really quick. There's our project. You've seen it before. If you'll, we've got a great looking building, 3 stories on the Center Street side. It tapers down to 2 stories. On the 130 South side will be dwarfed by a 2-story single family home that's immediately across the street. Not dwarfed, it'll be the same size. The commercial you'll see in that lower picture is what we're excited about. 10,000 square feet of over 10,000 square feet of commercial space, badly needed new commercial space on the west side. Second one. This is just how it would present as you look at it from that Geneva Road. Next slide. To brag just a little bit, 58% increase of new commercial space at the Village Center. That's what's existing. The 60, they are affordable units, and they're significantly more affordable than a single family house would be on that west side. Councilor McKay, you were really articulate about your expectations for that development agreement, and we have worked with staff to be able to try and get that right and include those items that were specifically mentioned there. A couple of other things as far as the parking goes, we've got our parking engineer here to talk to those or speak to some of those issues, but we worked hard to make sure that those electrical or all the covered parking will have electrical vehicle charging ports, and we're next slide. I want to take issue respectfully with the staff when they say that we don't comply with the general plan. Appendix X, and I've seen it in a couple of other different numbers, so I hope I'm getting this right. The Southwest Area Future Land Use Map, which we've all seen and talked about here tonight, it talks about the Village Center commercial mixed use. Can I get you to go to that map? I think it's 2 down or 3 down. There, stop there. This is no surprise. If you look at the legend in the upper right corner, it wasn't missed by me, and I'm sure it wasn't missed by those people that created it. But if you see the data at the top on the right, those acreages, those specify the expected density that was anticipated to be on the west side. Every acre is not the same. So it's not, you don't pick the airport terminal and say, well, that's going to be 4 units to the acre, so it can only have that sewer capacity. You obviously have to average what's going on in those particular areas. Where we have large ball fields, those aren't 4 units to the acre. When you have and I'm sorry that's my graphic. It's a PDF and it doesn't go very well. But in the discussion by the MDR, you'll see there's a discussion about that's anticipated to be 36 acres. And so when we get down to the specifics of that legend, I went through this with the folks at Public Works, and they verified everything that we said as to the use of those particular designations, all netted out 4 units to the acre. So when we have open space, or when we have the less dense areas, or when we have the park spaces, those anticipate the more dense use of some of these mixed use nodes. But most particularly is the 22 acre designation on the village center blob. And when you just simply follow the instructions under circle 1 in the legend, that anticipates the density in that area being 30 units to the acre. So take 22 units, times that by the 32 units, or 32 units per acre. That's where that 660 number came from. And so as that projecting was done, and again, we've gone through this exhaustively with this public works staff, when they calculated the sewer capacities, it anticipated those 660 in that particular area. So if we can go back to that general plan slide, the one titled general plan. And so we followed your recipe, we followed your instructions, and those 22 acres at 30 units to the acre. Let's read on. In the Southwest Neighborhood Plans, the future land use, and on page 14 and 15, it gives 4 quotes that I'm telling you what, I think we're pretty spot on here. The boundaries of the illustrated land uses should be viewed as flexible and not hard boundaries to allow creativity in the layout and development of the site. We can check that box. The plan also attempts to add enough residential units to the area to effectively support the successful development of neighborhood and community commercial centers. If we dilute that density repeatedly, then there's not adequate support of those commercial centers, which are so vital to, I think, what we want to have happen out on the west side. Number 3, the village center commercial mixed use designation is intended to allow for development of a mix of residential or retail, office, and residential units with attractive site amenities and distinctive design features with a density limit of 30 dwelling units per acre. The recipe calls for 30 units per the acre, no more than, obviously. And then finally, the residential development within the designation should match the density and scope of the city's MDR zone, which is exactly what we did. And again, at 30 units to the acre. So I think we're absolutely compliant with the general plan. We'll ask for a little bit of flexibility on that boundary. So if we can go to the next slide. And I'm sorry, those are the quotes that I just read to you. That's your neighborhood plan. Next one. Our map, and again, the next one. There's the blob, the famous or infamous blob. But let's go to the next one, and let's try and find those 22 acres. I will tell you that the blob follows the red outlined area, but you'll see within that red outlined area, look at that northwest corner. Those are all fully developed, brand new single family homes. Those aren't going anywhere. So that's, if we were to fully develop this, we were talking about, well, let's just scrape that ground of those brand new homes and put some mixed use in there. That's clearly not going to happen. The area that's immediately to the west of our project, same thing. The area on the southeast corner and in fact the south boundary is the fire station, which obviously we're not anticipating changing those uses there. But that area there, as we discussed last time, when you put those black boundaries around it, that's not the hypothetical that the blob was, but it's the specific of what is. So what is available, what you see in that black area, in that blackened area, is not 22 acres. So there is, even when you include our second acre, there is unused capacity. If we're looking at the 22 acres and the 30 units per acre, there's still unused capacity in that area. So not all acres are treated equally. And in this area, there's no flexibility. There's no going to the west. There's no going to the south. There's no going to the east. These areas are, and none to the north either because of the park. So we're not, I'm sorry, the word was, if we add density here, we're taking it away from someplace else. Can't happen. In this particular area, we've maxed out the boundaries. We're only going to the perimeters of developed civilization, if you will. Next slide, please. And there's the breakdown. We did with Public Works go through every single residence, every single parcel, and you'll see that when we add in everything there is and take away everything there is, there's did I type something wrong?
It made me happy to see as per the blob map. That just tickled me. So that's why I was smiling. It wasn't a comment on your presentation.
It wasn't a misspelled.
But if you did misspell something, she would have found it.
Yes, she would have. Okay, so you'll see that as in fully developed, if we develop the entire area, we still don't have 22 acres. We're not taking away density from anywhere. And this, of course, includes ours. Next slide, please. I just want to speak to parking really quick. When we follow your code, the mixed use code, it has that 75% reduction. And if you take a look at our density, we're not at the 117. We exceed the 117. We're at 120. And then our when you go to the next slide, this is the discussion about mixed use parking. And I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know, but on the left side of the screen is the discussion about between 12 and 4 a.m. There's no commercial parking that's going on there. So we got a zero on the commercial use. And then as you go throughout the day, it fluctuates. And the graph on the right shows the demand for commercial parking decreases at the time that residential increases. That said, our traffic engineer, which is your traffic engineer, said that our max need in that site is 90 units, or I'm sorry, is 90 stalls. Disagree with that, that's fine. We've got a 25% buffer between what we are actually creating and what is the science of parking dictates. So we have an awful lot of flexibility there. We think we've overparked, and that's good too. I need to speak, Councillor Shipley, to your question about the development that went in up on Geneva Road. And we talked to the planners up there in Orem, and they are somewhat baffled. There is adequate parking. They think it's an enforcement of some units within that development that are cheating. They can't put their finger on it, but when it's public parking, they can't undo that there. I went up there and I was surprised. I went up there and I've gone back there and I've gone back there and I've talked to neighbors and all the rest of it. And all they can say is that some people are cheating. And I don't know necessarily what it was. I talked to 3 planners up in Orem, and they realize it's a problem and it shouldn't be happening because it was adequately parked in ratios very similar to ours. So I have our, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Shipley.
Counselor Shipley.
That doesn't make me feel better about this. If people are going to adequately park, but we're going to still have the safety issue that is going on Geneva, like any suggestions for mitigation on that? I mean, we can't tell people they can't park on a public road, and if their best and easiest way to park is going to be on Geneva, then we got a problem.
Then, and let me speak to that. Yes, you can. You can red curb it. You can take away that option on Geneva Road if it becomes a traffic problem. And while I'm not particularly thrilled with that, it's your street. Happy to consolidate the parking on our property.
It's not our street, right?
Right.
It's not a Provo street.
Actually, I'll tell you what it is. Because I talked to you about this. South of Center Street, it is Provo City's street. North of Center Street, it's highway whatever, and it is a Geneva Road. So I talked to the planner guy out there, and he said you can't regulate north of Center Street or Center Street, but south of Center Street you can.
Confirmation from the city on that?
That's right.
It still points out the problem, though, that those cars are going to go somewhere. They're just going to go into neighborhoods. Obviously, the cars need to park somewhere, or else they wouldn't be on Geneva.
I don't disagree. I do come back to our graph on the right that says our use demand is 90 and we've got 120. So I have the traffic engineer prepared to speak to that. But before I turn that time over to him, any questions?
Counselor Whipple.
All right, so I appreciate that there's additional developer obligations that are included in the new draft that's given to us. I especially appreciate the greater specificity about the rooftop amenities, saying that those things would certainly be included. That gave me a little comfort, so thank you. I see that you're committed to plat it as a condo, but I don't see anything that indicates that those units would actually be for sale or that there would be any kind of owner occupation requirements for units. So it seems like you're opening an option for it, but you're not committing to selling the units.
Let me tell you what, we could not get financing for this project. I'm sorry, if it had an owner occupancy restriction. We went down that road with a full-throated effort to get that done. They think we're taking a huge risk on the west side. We went to 4 different lenders and they said they don't think it's viable. And so when we start talking about reducing the density or adding that aspect of an owner occupancy restriction, all 4 of them pulled it off the table.
So what this would do would be maybe some point in the future they could be sold, but for right now, in order to get funding to make the project, that can't be a commitment.
That's correct.
And are the concerns with your investors about the residential part or about the commercial portion and being able to fill those commercial spaces?
It's the combination. I think that it is very, very hard to make mixed use work. Very hard. In the core part of downtown, yes, things like that can work. But when you get out into an area that doesn't have that same vibe, it's all risk. If I told you how much we had to contribute to the loan of this thing, it's significantly disproportionate from what this project would if it were done in a more urban area.
Yeah, because what I've seen with some of these mixed use things in the city, it feels like we're not quite ready for this yet. And we're trying to shift the city into a more mixed use thing by requiring our developers to do that. But the result of it is, because we're not ready for it, we end up with vacant commercial space at the bottom of these mixed use developments.
To that point, Mr. Pepperoni was very helpful in trying to get this thing to mature just a little bit more before it was that mature. And he said, you've got to take that risk. There's a price point where somebody will go in. And I got to tell you what, we have been very aggressive to find people that will go in there. I apologize. for that, whatever I did there. And it might not be an ideal use right off the bat. We all want that little coffee shop, that little sandwich shop to be there on the corner. Would I love it? Yes. Have we talked to people about it? Have we started talking about reducing the rent so that we can get them in there? Yeah, we have. But is a dentist office what people want over there on the west side? I don't think that's the ideal yet, but I can tell you what, there's a dentist that's really pressing me really hard because he wants to capture that west side market. And I don't want to beat him up too bad, for trying to be there. The physical therapist that really wants to be there. These aren't the kind of uses that I think when people are thinking commercial or retail services that they're getting there. But Mr. Pepperoni articulated, he said you have to, and he wasn't my advocate. He was just simply saying, be prepared for, just reduce the rent until someone is prepared to go in there. That's why we're leaning, heavily on the stability of the residential for now, and hope that the commercial grows into that area. But someone's got to take that risk. I'm willing to do it.
So the idea is that the stability of the residential allows you to get through this period of time when you anticipate it's likely that your commercial may be vacant.
Precisely.
And I had another question too about the affordable housing. So how does that work with your investors? Like, how are you defining affordable? Is that affordable to a certain percentage of AMI, or what does that mean to you?
I apologize. We knew we were supposed to do that analysis, and it just never matured. But I will tell you that this kind of 2-bedroom unit is going to be significantly cheaper just because of how it's configured than a single family standalone house.
Oh, I fully believe that. But if the rent is still over $2,000 a month, then that's not affordable for a large section of our population. So I just want more clarity on what affordable means and if those numbers work with your investors and work with the need of our city. I don't know what affordable means to you.
That's a really good question. I'm sorry. When in the whole process of formulating our pro forma on this, we were operating off of. We started this project 2 years ago. We were working off of prices then to try to make things work. I wish I had a really good answer for you. I don't, but I can.
What will the rent be? Do you know for the units?
Between 1,200 and 1,600.
Okay. Yeah. So for the 3 unit, 1,600 for the 1 unit,
Yeah.
1 room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, that still is a lot of money for people, but it's relatively affordable in our city and certainly less than getting a mortgage right now. Although the concern is that since it's a rental unit, the rent can be raised year after year. So long term, it could become not affordable depending on how you have to raise those things in order to continue to maintain it and pay back your investors.
Please understand, our intent is to sell. We plan to hit the market with these, and while there won't be an owner occupancy restriction, I'm having walked in your shoes a little bit. I have a soft spot in my heart for the lack of affordable housing. I can tell you that the units that I rent locally, there isn't one of them that even comes close to a market rate because how can the first thing you do after you decide to cohabitate with someone is sign a lease for $2,100 a month? It's a chronic community problem, and I hope that we can contribute to doing this. And I need to keep this thing away from. And my express intent is these are not going to be harvested by investors. There's not going to be someone that shows up, buys 6 of them, and then starts renting those. They'll be sold individually with the expectation that there's going to be home ownership opportunities here in Provo.
So how would you stop investors from buying your units?
As the owner, it's at my discretion on who I sell to. I know that we would sure like that to be somewhere written in a development agreement at some point on the way. And I know it's difficult in a position you're in. You have to rely on the goodness of people Sorry, I'm putting myself in that category that some of us know that there's something more important out there than just the bottom line. And so my earnest effort would be to provide that affordable housing ownership opportunity for people.
Okay, I have one last question
Go
about
ahead.
your considerations that you put in there. So just clarification on your covered parking, that they would be capable for EV. Is this idea that the person who is assigned that stall with their apartment or whatever they have could then put in the charger, and there would already be wires that they could add the particular charger? Would you be installing all of those chargers?
I'll admit that my wife hasn't got that car that she wants so bad yet. So I don't fully understand it. But when we did Spring Creek, we put in outlets for every garage, and so I don't know how connections work, but every one of them were capable of EV charging, and we anticipate having all those available. And I don't quite fully know how it goes, and we've actually been approached by another outfit about, can you put them in so they're commercially available? And I don't know fully how that works, but we have talked to our solar people who are helping us design that system so that we can have compatibility between it all. So the expectation is we've got those 50 covered stalls. All of them will have the plug, and if that means an extension of that so that they can all be plugged into the car, I want people to use them. I think it would be a nice amenity to have down there. And if you understand it better, you ask a better question. I'll try and give it.
Can I clarify with that? Because I have a charger in my garage, and so what I think you're talking about is that you would there's a price that it costs, because I just paid it, to have it installed in your garage if it's not already there, so that it's a 220 outlet, and it can run $3,000 or $4,000 depending on how far away they have to come. But then any car owner typically buys a charging unit that attaches to that plug and then charges the car. So that wouldn't be normally, I don't think I'm aware of any home builders that provide that charging unit. That usually comes with the car or is purchased as part of the purchase of the car.
So they would then have whatever that unit is, and they would plug that
And
into the 220.
yeah, that unit's only like $600 or $1,000.
If it's a garage, otherwise
If
it's
it's a
going to be
garage.
stolen left and right. These are outside in the open. They're going to be stolen because they cost over.
Right, but you're talking about a plug, right? You're
Yeah,
not
but this
talking
is an
about
outside plug. He's talking about covered parking, like carport. People bring their chargers and they're going to be stolen.
You know what?
No, they
has to
keep
be-
them in their cars.
No, I'm saying when they're plugged in at night, you can easily just steal them and unplug it and take it.
Oh, I see.
Like the ones that are outside are connected, like the ones over at some office complexes, they're a built-in unit that is one piece that you
Yeah,
plug
I mean,
in.
they could be technically stolen, but they're bolted into the wall.
Yeah.
Correct, but and to your point, Chair McKay, there is a recessed box. We did this. Someone brought this bright idea, and so we were able to do it in one of the buildings on the project we just did. It's a recessed box that has a key. Open it, and it's got that plug inside it. And so, and briefly honest, I didn't understand how the system worked, but they wanted that recessed cabinet capacity with the key. on it.
Okay, so this has been thought of, obviously.
Yes, we try hard. So, any other questions? May I just have my traffic engineer come up and answer any questions about parking?
Certainly. We'll give you, it's going to be your questions. So do you have a presentation for us? You can do 5 minutes if you want.
No, I think Steve covered.
Okay, so
covered
just
most
any
everything.
questions from the council? Could you give us your name for the record, please?
Yeah, it's Jordy Barrett, and I work with Hales Engineering out of Lehigh.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilor Shipley.
Yeah, just help us a little bit more. I mean, so this place in Orem that I'm worried about, that everybody parks on Geneva, that had enough parking, that the city planners, created enough parking for them. What's your professional opinion of what's going on there and how we prevent it?
That's a great question. Without being too familiar, I guess, with that specific development, I would think that, I would think that, and that's tricky too, I guess, because it's a UDOT right of way in that section of Orem, whereas you guys have a little bit more flexibility, as we discussed, south of Center Street to work with that. Obviously, there's striping, run out there with your red striping,
get it going. But ideally, with the rates established with the city code, that shouldn't be the issue. And obviously I wasn't involved when those rates were determined for the mixed use parking. But in my experience with other cities we dealt with, I think they are conservative rates. And I think as far as all the data that we have currently, I believe, and I'm confident that we are parked sufficiently for this development. As Stephen mentioned, we did do that time of day mixed use analysis, and really retail and the multifamily housing, they're quite complementary to each other. However, there is some overlap. So if we were to get rid of the retail, for example, the maximum parking demand during the day would be 60 some odd, but then with the retail and then that overlap, we get that max of 90. But as Steve mentioned, that's like a 25%. What percent? Yeah, 25% lower than what they're proposing with the 120 stalls. So I hope that kind of answered your question a little bit. Yeah.
Any more questions? Councillor Whipple.
Hi.
Hi.
So my understanding is that with some of the parking studies that we've done here, our engineers have done a good job at figuring out, what the use is, how people will come and go and everything. But what they weren't able to fully capture is the fact that people will have extra cars that they just leave parked. So while we're getting the movement of cars, like you're going to work or school or to run errands, and then you come back and park it, they aren't adequately capturing the fact that you've got a second car or your truck or whatever that you leave because that's not your commuter vehicle. And so are you considering those extra vehicles that people come with, that they leave there, that they aren't using on a daily basis when you do this kind of analysis?
Yeah, generally we do. I know in this case, we applied the city rates, but just to step through some of the rates. So the rates for a 2 or 3 bedroom home are 2.25 stalls per unit. And so that allows for 2 stalls per unit, which in a 2 or 3 bedroom household, usually, like my wife and I live in a 3 bedroom condo right now. We have 2 cars. That accommodates it, plus the guest parking. And so that is kind of built into the rates. And I know sometimes we would refer to the national data. For example, if we weren't able to reach the city required rate of 117, we would have looked at national data, and that also takes into account multiple vehicles per unit, just based off of the actual parking demand at actual locations. So
when you say actual parking demand, actual locations, are you talking about locations in Provo, like similar complexes? Or are you talking about aggregate information that's in a broader study area?
Yeah, so it's information, it's national data in a broader study area, but they do narrow it down between like dense urban, for example, downtown Salt Lake City or something, versus suburban kind of standard neighborhoods. And so there is some specification, if that makes sense, of that data, where they're not just taking, wild housing, high-rise buildings
numbers
in New York City and applying that to Provo, so.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else have a question? All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll now go to council discussion. Thank you, Dave. Any additional public comment? Any public comment for this item? And this is Becky Bogdan.
Here, the screen's a no-no. Okay, number 1. The very first thing I found out is a neighborhood chair. 500 West. What's north of it is a state street. South of it's a city street. Lakeview Parkway is something that it may be taken over by the state, it may not. So my section of 5th West is in limbo. We don't know what it's going to be. Geneva Road, if you look at the MAG plans, that's going to be a 5-lane highway. So to count on, yes, that's a city street today, that doesn't mean it's going to be a city street tomorrow. The state can always come in and take it over, because from what I learned is they like to have their streets connected, especially if they own a street. So if they own the Lakeview Parkway, they're going to want that section of Geneva Road. Just throwing that out there. 2, I'm going to throw another thing out there. Our sewer connections are very, very, very limited. So what happens if, I don't know, something amazing comes in and we have given away all of our limited sewer connections for every developer that wants a little bit more density? Because we know every single developer that comes in on the west side wants more density. So how do you justify this project can have it and this project can't? And what are you getting in trade for that density? That's something that I want to throw out there for you guys to look at. The commercial space isn't going to be there for a while. We are on the west side where everybody drives. And if you're looking at an apartment complex, how do you guarantee that you're just going to have 2 drivers? I've got teenage kids. I've got adult kids living with me. Those 3-bedroom apartments, are you not going to have teenage kids? Are you not going to get maybe a married couple with a student? Thanks.
Thanks, Becky. Any more public comment? Please state your name.
Hi, my name is Tanner Bennett. I live at 752 East, 620 North in Provo, just south of BYU campus. I'm just wanting to stand up here and voice my support, actually, for this project, increasing high density housing for areas that are out on the west side. As somebody that's looking to stay here in Provo for the long term after I graduate BYU, projects like this are things that excite me. The fact that they planned for parking, the fact that we're looking at turning this into kind of a town center. I think that there's been a lot of thought, having listened to him and listened to the discussion that's been going on. I just wanted to voice my support, especially in considering that there are an increasing number of students that are looking for more affordable housing. One of the things that I did wonder about is if we're looking to prevent this property from being sold to investors as a part of making sure that we aren't exceeding AMI, because right now Provo is having an affordability crisis. Being a being a married student, I know that that is an issue that we're currently facing. But if we would be able to have them form an HOA, that would guarantee that units are not able to be sold to more than one entity or one individual. I don't know if that's a way to circumnavigate it or guarantee that that's not sold out to people that are just going to take the apartments and continue to raise rates for students and people that are in our position. So I just wanted to say thank you, council, and I hope that you consider this further. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment? Rick Cox.
Hi, I'm Rick Cox. I own some property adjacent or near this project, and I'm here to speak in support of it. I sincerely believe that we need to have more dense development in West End so that we can get better services. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Any other public comment?
How are you?
Good.
Dave Lewis. I live on the west side. And Dave highlighted my biggest concern. I've almost run over a couple people, run across, where is it, 1900 South Norm. I've called the planner in Orem and said, why all the cars on Geneva? So that's my number one concern with projects. I like the process, a lot of good feedback from the neighborhood meeting. A lot of good feedback, and I thought improvements on the project from Planning Commission. I know that they only had 6 people there the last time they met, and Raylene wasn't there. She voted for it, in favor of it before. I like the way it looks. again, I'm with Dave. I'm concerned about the parking, but I think that there's been extra effort to make sure that the ratios are in line. Because the last thing I'd want is the same thing that's happening in Orem on Geneva Road. I think all of us have driven past that project. Yep. So I like the project and I like the feedback and I like the improvements on the project. I think I'm excited to have professional spaces there that I can go just blocks away instead of the other side of town. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. Any other public comment? All right. Now we'll do council discussion. All right, Councillor Hoban.
All right. First of all, I want to say thanks to Steve and his group for trying to find a solution to get more retail on the west side. I knocked a lot of doors in that area and put up a sign on that corner actually when I was campaigning 4 years ago. I think I know the area somewhat well, having spent a lot of time there. And I think we really need something on that corner. I think that would be really beneficial. But I will say I can't support the project as is. So I'll share my 2 cents why. So just anecdotally, I did go to another development. You had mentioned in a previous council meeting, go check out Spring Creek. And I actually knocked on some doors and talked to the residents, and they had good things to say actually about the development. But I will say that all four residents that I spoke to, they were not owner occupied. They had been bought, and some were being owned by multiple people who own multiple units. I just don't think there's any way we can count on these being owner occupied. All four of the ones that I talked to were rentals, but it's not scientific. I know George hates my anecdotal evidence that I bring to council meetings. So I'll just put the asterisks up there that I only spoke to 4 residents out of, I don't know, hundreds that are there. But so that's just anecdotally. So my main concern is I just don't see this as, I know you followed the recipe, and so totally get where you're saying, hey, look, I followed the recipe, guys. But I think the recipe is wrong for that area, because the mixed use, it's just not, I don't know, knowing that area pretty well, just spending a lot of time there. The mixed use makes sense, but not the parking reduction, because I just really am concerned that the parking is just going to spill into the residential. That's going to cause conflicts between, renters and the homeowners there, et cetera. And we just know what kind of problems those cause. And I'm trying to be open-minded about this sort of thing. Actually, I read a book that was recommended to me by a constituent. It's called Paved Paradise: How Parking Explains the World. And basically it has some counterintuitive ideas, approach to, cars and parking issues and things like that. But I don't know if these ideas work in that area. I mean, it's got one bus that runs once an hour. It doesn't run after 7 p.m. It doesn't run Sundays. It doesn't run after 6 p.m. on Saturdays. Nobody in their right mind is going to try to bike west to east or east to west going across that Center Street ramp. I mean, I just don't see it. I just don't see this as an area where we can say, yeah, we're going to do a 25% reduction in parking and have that be a good idea. So I also tried to get creative in my mind here, because I really want something there, but I just couldn't get over this hurdle. And so I was thinking, okay, what about some sort of joint parking agreement where you have the commercial and residential share parking? And that's essentially what your engineer is kind of, their model is looking at. And I just don't see that we can guarantee that. First of all, I talked to Brian, and there's no way for us to guarantee, once a certificate of occupancy is issued, there's no way for us to guarantee that that those parking spots will be shared, and that the retail, the whole complex could be bought up by a few investors and they could just do away with any sort of agreement that we mandated in the development process. So we can't we can't 100% ensure, we can't sure at all actually that those parking spots will be available to residential. So to group the parking together, I think is a risk. It's a really high risk because, there's no way that Domino's or Papa John's is going to not have parking for their customers and for their drivers and things like that. Or, a carpet cleaning business that has a fleet of 10 vehicles is going to want places to park their vehicles at night. Or, Councilor McKay mentioned a crumble cookie, that's open till 11. I just don't think we can really count on those retail spaces being there at night for those residents to park. So long story short, I could support something, the 30 units, definitely. Maybe I could be convinced 45, but at 60, it just seems like we're going to run into some issues with the parking / density. All right. Also, I can't get over that staff is really concerned about this. And so I'm looking at this saying, well, there's good merits to this proposal. There's some risks to this proposal. The scales are pretty evenly balanced. I want to make this happen. But I think staff recommendation does weigh heavily on, in my mind. There are times that I go against what staff recommends, but I try to be very, conscious of that and make sure I'm making the right decision. I just don't know if I'm making the right decision in this by saying, yeah, let's move forward with 60 units. So those are my hesitations and why I can't support it as is. Thanks.
I need to announce that Bill Fillmore is on Zoom. He's been on there a while, and we do need him to accept being a panelist so he can speak. Bill, just so you know. All right. Any more discussion? Councilor Ellsworth.
Thank you for iterating on this project, and thank you to staff for working on this project. I think Travis was saying, did you say that he followed the recipe, but you don't like the recipe?
What I meant by that is, and staff has said this before, that we didn't anticipate offering a 25% reduction in parking in a mixed use zone out in the west side like this.
Yeah.
That's what I meant by that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The recipe might work in other areas
I
or
see.
downtown and such. Yeah.
So is your primary concern parking?
Yeah. Primary concern. I'd love to have something out there, but
Yeah.
I think the parking is going to be a reality we have to deal with for years to come.
Okay. Yeah, this is just my own thought process, but there's a lot of kind of internal contradictions to what we want and what we say we want and what's written in our policies and our codes, right? Because we've talked earlier today about affordable housing and the need for affordable housing and different types of housing, which are through different ranges of incomes. But then we oftentimes reject these kinds of projects. And then, the West Side would really like a grocery store, but so much of that depends on rooftops and a populace that can support that market. And this is obviously very proximate to what has been or could be a potential grocery store site. So I am partial to the staff's recommendation, but I also hate the idea of moving the goalpost. And I agree with, I think, what Councilor Whipple expressed earlier about mixed use, our city not really being mature for mixed use in all parts. That's my feeling, is even campus mixed use. Most folks use that for the density and not to integrate quality retail or even, any kind of quality commercial. I'm happy to have a dentist or a physical therapist. I think that's great. But I think in the state of Utah, the places where I've seen the best mixed use are like downtown Salt Lake, where there is a maturity. And so the zone isn't easily applied everywhere because we're not going to get everything we want from this zone anywhere in the city. And part of that is in the parking. So I hope we can find a solution for parking and for this site, because it could add a lot to the West Side in terms of diverse unit sizes and affordability, as well as commercial opportunity. But I don't want to shoehorn something in that's not meeting the hopefully objective standards that the staff have been describing.
Any more comments? Councillor Hanley.
Yeah, I think my fellow councilors have spoken thoughtfully, and I appreciate the care with which staff and the Planning Commission looked at this. And I also appreciate Mr. Turley's thoughtful responses. I think my initial question still seems unanswered in my mind. I'm not quite sure. I mean, I've alluded to the fact that I found Mr. Turley's arguments quite persuasive in terms of the so-called blob not being very precise, and yet when looked at very closely, it doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense in my mind to draw a precise line and say no to this project when it doesn't look like we have any sort of guarantee that we're going to get the density that we wanted in that whole blob in any case. And I remember that when I looked at the West Side plan for the very first time, my single most, my greatest anxiety was whether we were going to build a lot of homes and not provide any sort of commercial centers and thereby create a real traffic problem whereby citizens on the West Side were constantly having to do the dreaded west-east crossing of the city, which is our least traffic efficient direction in the entire city, is moving, this way rather than any other way. And so I was always very keen on this spot being what we said we wanted there. Becky Bogdan said what would justify it. I think the simple fact is that there's no better place to put greater density than your commercial elements. Now, I grant that this isn't a massive strip mall. It's not going to provide every service for people on the West Side, but we have to start somewhere where we start providing those services. And we want the residents who live nearby there to be the first people to take advantage of those locations. I wish it were I'm sure we all wish it were more of a science than an art to try to get the right kind of commercial there to really make it, provide the best services possible. Although it sounds like you're talking to some promising possibilities. And hopefully it's something that people who live there would make use of, right? I mean, it seems like it would be really counterintuitive to put something there that suddenly people on the East Side want to go over to. So don't make it like the unique one of a kind thing that everyone says we got to go over to the West Side to go get it, because we don't solve the problem. But I do think if we do have a doctor's office or other kinds of commercial opportunities there that keep people local, that's the whole point of picking selectively places to densify, so that we don't end up with, as much as I like single family detached homes like the rest of us, the fact is if that's all we do, or that's always our highest priority, and we don't learn how to smartly densify around commercial and transport hubs, then we're in trouble. Now, there's a big problem on the West Side with transportation, and I don't know if the bus schedule suddenly starts looking more of an opportunity for public transportation if there are those hubs, right, and there's more density there. Then hopefully that also becomes an opportunity to make that more fluid. So, as much as I don't like going against staff recommendations, I sort of feel like I'm just not as persuaded that this is a big risk. I mean, I get that, as we make this choice, this does mean that other areas get less density in theory. In practice, well, I guess in theory and in practice, but this area was designated for a certain kind of density that, again, we don't even have a guarantee yet that we're going to have in its totality in that whole area. So I don't, I don't know why we can't make a slight allowance with the extra acre here. It doesn't cause me as much heartburn, I don't think. So I'm willing to take this. Every decision I think is risky, but I feel like the risk is low enough and the potential rewards are high enough that I'm willing to support it.
Any more comments?
Yes, Madam Chairman, this Bill Philbin, let me speak up now if I might. I've appreciated the discussion. It's very thoughtful insights, questions, and comments. Personally, I'm quite unsettled on this. I appreciate the effort on Mr. Turley. We communicated a week or two back, and I urged him to be more creative to try to address the concerns that the council expressed at our last meeting. And I have seen some of that. I think maybe there's room for a little more. I do like the design. I like the idea of having commercial mixed use on the west side. I think it's, it's a good place to add density if we're going to have commercial mixed use. Nonetheless, I'm troubled by the parking issue, troubled by the safety concerns on Geneva, troubled very much by the sewer capacity issue. Very concerned about the staff's reservations, which have just not disappeared entirely. I'm concerned about the investor issue. They simply pick it up for cheap rentals. And I'm concerned about the uncertainty of the success with mixed use in that locale. Maybe that's a good place to start. And Mr. Turley is willing to take the risk, but certainly don't want a lot of empty storefronts. And I guess then we've got just the perennial issue about what kind of housing are we trying to generate out there. And I'm just one that's very much in favor of single-family startup homes and move-up homes. And heaven knows Provo's got a ton of rentals already. We do more than our share in the county. So all those just kind of bundling, I guess, my anxieties here about this particular project. Personally, I'd like more time. I'd like to see Mr. Turley take into account the concerns expressed tonight, make one more creative effort to go back to the drawing board with our planners and address their concerns as well as some of the concerns expressed by the council. I don't know that there's any great need for an immediate vote tonight. And personally, I'd like to postpone this till our next meeting and see if we can't, if maybe Mr. Turley can stretch a little bit further to try to address some of these concerns.
Thank you, Bill. So is Bill making a motion? Is that the net, or just go through with a vote?
Well, I guess if you'd like, I could make a motion to give this process a couple more weeks at least and invite the developer and our planners to get their heads together and try to be a little more creative if possible.
Okay, one sec, Bill. What, Dave? Brian.
Well, the handbook rule on automatic continuances doesn't affect the ability to continue it as many more times as you want. I mean, from a technical standpoint, you could take an item and you could continue it every meeting to the next meeting for eternity. There's no limit on that. Not suggesting to anybody that that's what we ought to do, but whether it's been continued by rule the first time or not, you can still do it. It's just that it requires a motion and a majority vote to continue it now.
Thank you, Brian. Councillor Ellsworth.
So there was a motion. Was there a second?
Bill, did you make a motion?
I did.
Is there a second? Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Just for the sake of advancing.
All right. Well, then we will do a vote on the motion to let's do a discussion on the motion. Counselor Shipley.
So I was just going to say that I think we should hear from all the counselors, and then, we're pretty good at head votes. And if they don't have the votes, I think, if we want to further discuss this, that's fine, but they could also bring it back again. It's not like it kills it either way. They can edit what they're proposing and come back. So I don't know. For me, I think we should just hear out everybody first and go from there.
I'll just add, I think if we could relieve some of the counselors' concerns about parking, and I think if people feel comfortable with the way that the acreage was described, I guess if staff has like a substantial objection to how that acreage was described, but it was a compelling argument to hear that, and we know that many of those homes won't be torn down, those single family homes won't be torn down. So if there is a compelling argument against that, then I'd be open to it. But I'm also fine if the applicant brings it back with a better parking situation and it could move forward.
Yeah, I have issues with it as it is.
Chair McKay, could I make a procedural comment?
Please
I
do.
understand where Councilor Shipley is coming from, but in part of our ongoing motion training, the motion is on the table, and technically the only discussion that should take place right now is about the motion of whether to continue or not, unless Councilor Shipley wants to make a substitute motion to continue debate until debate is concluded, and then vote on the motion.
No, my point in discussing it was just to say I don't support the motion because I'd like us to discuss this further.
I'll make a motion that we discuss this further.
Second that.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so now you got to vote on that motion, or as Councilor Shipley is
Okay,
saying, I mean, the
we're
other option
gonna-
is to just vote on the motion to continue, and if it fails, then debate's going to continue. And you can.
We are
But
going to
but-
vote on the substitute motion to continue discussing this. Counselor McKay, yes. Counselor Whipple,
Yes.
Counselor Ellsworth,
Yes.
Counselor Fillmore,
I suppose, yes.
Counselor Hanley,
Yes.
Counselor Shipley,
Yes.
Counselor Hoban.
Yes.
That passes 7-0. So we will continue to discuss
Okay, thank you for indulging me.
tonight. Counselor Shipley.
So, yeah, I don't think I need to take much time. My sentiments kind of line up with what Counselor Hanley expressed. I mean, it's uncomfortable as a council to come and have something that the staff isn't fully supportive of. Obviously, we'd love the staff to be supportive of everything we look at. But the main hiccup, as I understand it, is where this is drawn in a blob that wasn't meant to be a blob in the first place. And so I guess for me, I look at that future land use map and I say what was intended, I think. And my interpretation of that is that the density could make sense in this area. I really want a project like this as a west side, somebody who lives on the west side. I want something down Geneva that, more services, more retail, more commercial, and I want more people. Maybe I'm a minority, but I actually would welcome more, housing and more people on the west side to support that commercial, those commercial nodes and different kinds of housing. I think I'd welcome that. I'm not particular to just single family housing on the west side. So I came into today's discussion with the main concern. My primary concern was parking, as alluded to. If we've got control over that part of Geneva, I feel less uncomfortable about that. To Becky's point, if the state can come in and take control of it, I guess that still doesn't pose a risk on the parking side because they won't allow parking if they change that section of Geneva. They just will not allow parking on that road. So either way, I don't get parking on that road. While the city controls it, we can control that there's no parking on it. And if UDOT were to take control of it, they're not going to allow parking on it. And so that safety risk or parking problem on Geneva goes away in my mind. So that's the main concern I came into with today. And I feel like that's been alleviated. I can support it as is. I don't have any objection to us continuing to discuss this and trying to make the project more creative to have more support from the council. But at this point, I could support it as is.
In regards to the parking, I know I'm worried about the parking, and it can be off Geneva, but it'll just go somewhere else. It'll go into the neighborhoods. I also went to Spring Creek and checked it out, and I didn't know it was Spring Creek, but I have good friends that live there, and I've gone there to park, and Spring Creek is every piece of curb is parked on, and they're the huge parking issues. And my friends that live there complained about the parking being a significant issue. And in the density adds to the parking, right? I don't think away from city centers, there should be the 25% reduction with mixed use. Yeah. Any more comments? Councillor Whipple.
I feel like I've already raised some of my concerns with this, with my questions earlier, and I appreciate your answers on that. Where we were talking about owner occupancy, I understand why you can't put that in the development agreement now. But I'm wondering if it would be possible to still get the funding from your investors if you did something that would limit the number of units that could be sold to any particular buyer. You know, that kind of thing could help prevent a single owner or investor from buying up a large block of it. It seems like that could be a policy that could help potentially encourage an owner occupation without explicitly making that so. I'm also curious about how an HOA could work with that. An HOA maybe that would cover both the residential and the commercial property, that could manage the parking issues as they arise and could be responsive to that. So I think there may be some possible solutions to those two concerns that we haven't explored yet, partly because we haven't asked you to explore them yet. Honestly, I'm not fussed about the parking at all. I'm reading the same book that Councillor Hoven is reading, probably recommended by the same person. So I'm okay with that. And I would say to Councillor Hoven that no, you wouldn't ride your bike over the center street flyaway thing. You take a different route and do it all the time. It's fine. Other things that affect my thinking on this are the Planning Commission meeting, where that was a relatively small quorum and it was a draw. I understand that ends up being a de facto rejection or denial, but looking at it more carefully, I don't really see it that way. And I think it would be too hasty to take that procedural denial as a full denial. I also want to avoid putting any developer through a process of endless discussion and moving goalposts and asking you to come back and do something else and another thing that increase the cost. And I don't know that it necessarily results in a satisfactory project for either the city or the developer. It seems like it just creates headaches and tangles for everyone. Because of that, I almost feel that if we don't have enough support on the council to vote for it, it would be a more merciful thing to just say no and cut you loose than it would be to continue and say, well, maybe if you did this one other thing, we would like you a little bit better than we do now. And I think that's a real issue that we need to consider anytime we're considering these projects. For the projects itself, I think I've made my position about the blobbiness clear and the density. I'm okay with that, even though I have great respect for our staff and I don't like to be on the other side of them on this one, but I am on the other side on this one. So even though I have some significant hesitations for the project, I think it's the kind of thing that we really need in our city to meet our general plan goals, to create more housing. For the West Side, there aren't very many places where it would make sense to have more density. And as we were doing that West Side plan, we we'd originally talked about different types of housing units, and then we changed it to just slightly different sizes of lots. But I think the vast majority of new units that we'll get on those side are going to be those detached single family homes. This is an opportunity to get a little bit of diversity on the west side, and one of the few ones that our current zoning map would allow for. So that is my position. You guys can count that as you're counting heads as you will.
Counselor Ellsworth.
Thank you to my colleagues who have discussed this so thoughtfully. And I feel like I have some clarity of thought because of your comments. And Chair, I'd like to call the question.
All right.
Wait, stop. I have a quick comment. For Bill's sake.
Counselor Shipley.
So Bill made the comment about the public works issue, and I just want to remind him that a couple months ago, we had like a 15-acre property for single-family homes that we authorized, and then we took it back and put an industrial building on it. So we got plenty of capacity that project gave us for this one.
Thank you, Dave. All right, we're going to call for a vote. Chair McKay, no. Counselor Whipple?
Yes.
Counselor Ellsworth?
Yes.
Counselor Fillmore?
I think without further refinement to the proposal, even though it's a close call for me, I've got to vote no.
Counselor Handley?
Yes.
Counselor Shipley?
Yes.
Counselor Hoban?
I just need some clarity. There was a motion. Bill's motion still had to be resolved, did it not?
No, the substitute.
It was a
motion
substitute?
passed,
Okay,
which
sorry
proved it.
about that. It was substitute, my bad. No.
All right, so that is 5-2. Thank you. 4-3 passes. All right. Congratulations. Okay, now, without further ado, if there's no objection, we are going to adjourn the municipal council by unanimous consent.